Welcome to Define Your Path with DocV, bringing you real talk with global thought leaders to inspire hearts and minds for sustainable breakthroughs and profitability for your life and business. Here's your host, DocV.
Hi, I'm Dr. Virginia LeBlanc, also known as DocV, the Pivot Maestro. Welcome to the Define Your Path podcast with those seeking to define their own path into purposed entrepreneurship. That's what we're all about. This is a show about transforming perspectives, as well as inspiring and motivating you to think without a box by exposing you to global thought leaders as my guests today and change agents and legacy builders across industries on how they successfully define their path in life and business through profitability and sustainable wins. At Defining Paths, we operate in truth, transparency, and love to help you navigate the waters of your life and put you back in business. And Define Your Path podcast is no different. It all starts in the mind, folks. Will you be the captain or the crew is the question. Today's spotlight is with Regan Barnes, and I'm so excited for you all to meet Regan. When Regan started a blog, she titled it The Clueless Mama, and chronicled the many ways that motherhood did not come naturally to her, as well as her delightful discoveries of how to finally feel empowered in motherhood. Now she is your cheerleader, folks. As I like to say, she's your corner woman. Fellow moms, if she could build the skills to rock the cradle and rule the world, she knows that you can too. Over the last 20 years, she has supported mothers in various ways, teaching childbirth education, serving as a doula, mentoring mothers through a class entitled How to Succeed While Staying Home. Absolutely brilliant. And producing the first successful mothering convention, a Hoosier, which I just discovered and felt a kinship there from my time in Indiana. She's a Hoosier with a degree from Indiana University. She is happily married to Ted. They are raising their 8 children, ages 4 to 21. Yes, I did say 4 to 21. In Utah. Blessed to have her own mother living with her. She readily gives credit to her Father in heaven for fueling the ideas that promote and advocate for motherhood, which are at the foundation of Momivate. Isn't that a great name? God knows who crucial moms are in making the world a better place. And he wants us to have the resources necessary to overcome obstacles, feel capable, and give our children the best possible chances, says Regan. And I agree with her. So Regan, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much. It is an honor to be here.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to hear your story, and just hear how you faced your fears to love the skin you're in and pivot into pursuing your passion and soul purpose. In our podcast, we like to keep it simple, so we ask you 2 questions and then we just flow between those 2 questions. And those 2 questions are, how have you defined your path? And how do you help others define theirs? So Regan, the spotlight is yours.
Oh, well, thanks. I really feel like my story of engaging mothers actually started long before I became a mother. I grew up in the home of a single mother, bless her heart. She had 5 children, and our dad, she would call him the sperm donor. He was not involved. When the term deadbeat dad came out, we were like, oh, our dad is the poster dad for deadbeat dad, It was sad. And we all had our different ways of dealing with that abandonment. In some ways, I was grateful that abandonment was the only thing I was dealing with. Actually, my mom herself, when she was growing up, she dealt with being molested by her stepfather. So in a lot of ways, I was able to count my blessings that at least he just left. There was no abuse, although neglect is a form of abuse. But as far as trying to put things in context for my own life and whatnot, I also feel like growing up with a single mom taught me how important motherhood was, because she was always sad, lamenting the fact that she could not be a full-time mom. Her heart was in it, but the fact was she had to leave the household, and that meant a lot of kids. There were, like I mentioned, 5 of us. And so we were not, particularly well cared for, I guess. I mean, she, like I said, her heart was there and she did the best she could, but you can only be in one place at a time. So having to leave the household was really hard on her and on her efforts as a mother. And we noticed that different ones of us were having different kinds of troubles and whatnot. But we kept pressing forward. And the beautiful thing was, I even had a brother end up getting caught dealing drugs in high school, at the high school. So that's a felony, He did get kicked out and spent a few years in jail. And watching how my mom was in his corner. What'd you call that? Being a corner
woman. Yeah.
I loved seeing that because it really meant to me unconditional love.
Yes.
And I just realized so much during that time frame how important mothers were. And not necessarily preventive, because they can't prevent everything, right?
Right.
Kids
absolutely.
are going to make their own choices. But being there at the court dates and going and visiting, even though it's a hassle to visit someone in jail,
Yes.
all those steps that she took to continue to build his sense of worth.
Yeah.
And so as he struggled, again, I feel like not having a dad was the obstacle, but it was having the right mom who was not going to give up on him despite having a felony.
Yes.
That ultimately brought about his change. And he is a lawyer now too. So he really did a 180 there. And I give all that credit to my mom. I give him some credit too, right?
Just a little bit.
He had to define his path in that sense. But so that did influence me quite a bit. And when I chose who I was going to marry, and luckily he chose me too, part of our negotiations there had to do with that I really wanted to be an intentional mother.
Yes.
And interestingly, I had been voted in high school. I had been voted the most likely to succeed. And so I realized, or what I thought was happening, if I was choosing intentional full-time motherhood, it occurred to me that, I guess I'm giving up on that concept of success, of what the high school, my fellow classmates had decided, right? They were like, well,
right.
There you go. If you're just going to be a mom, then whatever. So I really started looking around about that, though. And what does it mean to succeed as a mom? Because you aren't programming a computer, right? You're not pushing buttons in your children and ta-da, they follow the formula and you're done. Kids, one of the major challenges is they have their own personalities. They have their own decisions that they want to make. Yes. And so to me, as I mentioned the past with my mom and then my own time as a mom, that's what it really came out is, what does it mean to love that child in a way that fuels them? Yes. That gives them the ability to decide for themselves what path they want and know that their mom will be their cheerleader,
Absolutely. Regan, you just said a mouthful there. And first of all, I thank you for just being so transparent and truthful and real, because this is what people need to hear. People are tired of the dress up. of, just, people wearing the mask and telling them everything is okay and life is perfect. Oh, and, and it has to look like this perfect little thing. But your story, your family story, your brother, your mother, the story is imperfect. But I love to say we're perfectly perfect in our imperfection. And it's beautiful how he managed to flip his life, how you found, you experiencing this. So some people would have, fleed from this, right? They wouldn't have found their passion, their purpose. And, in dealing with some of, these pain points or any trauma that might have come from it. But I love how you have redefined what motherhood is, what it looks like, what it can be,
Yes, I refuse to use the term stay-at-home mom. To me, that is even though people might look at me and give me that label, that is not something that I personally accept, and I won't promote that concept because it is sending a subliminal message that you have to stay at home. It sounds like somebody's talking to a dog, like it's demeaning, And I really believe that as mothers, we have to be conscientious of the fact that the work we are doing at home, it is rippling out. It is what builds society from the cellular level. It is. And so I appreciate this opportunity for you giving me a platform really to share some of these, because I feel like it's revolutionary, even though motherhood is the singular way people have ever gotten to this planet.
Right.
So it's not a new idea, right? Motherhood is not a new idea, but we live in such a different time, and it's wonderful and it's exciting to live in these modern days. But we can't leave our kids. We can't be giving them the shaft. They need to come along with us. They need to see a mom in action. They need to feel like they're her priority no matter what. So the nonprofit that I'm getting going, it's called Momivate. It's a play on words, right? You can hear, because I have 8 kids, so it sounds like Momivate, but it's also the word motivate with an M in the middle instead. So yeah, we just want to motivate moms to want to be moms along with whatever else, what talents that they're giving to the world.
Right. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. And so many people try to say, and I totally agree with you. I dislike that term stay-at-home mom because it suggests that that's all women should do, or the only thing that they can do who decide to be at home. But you're doing so much more. Literally, you think, I think one of my guests in our last show, we talked about how we've been in beta test all our life, and it's just, we have to figure that out, for whatever our sole purpose is, see how we can and connect those dots. And you have done that brilliantly.
I feel like that is what my platform really is saying to moms, look how motherhood is defining you. It is giving you all of these refining situations where you are learning all of these skills that if we can, and this is what we plan to do, if we can advocate among employers and help them see these soft skills that you have built during your intense mothering time.
Yes.
And that way, when you put motherhood on a resume, that employer is just going to snatch you up because of all. So we call it RAISE. It's an acronym. It's got 5 letters, RAISE, that you learned a lot about relationships. So that's the R in RAISE. You learned how to set the atmosphere in your home. If you think about like the 5 senses that we do as mothers here at home, we define what the house is going to look like, what it's going to smell like, what it's going to taste like, what kinds of touch we have in our homes. So that's the atmosphere. The I is for income and outgo. So there's that financial element to motherhood, whether you're in charge of the income or you're in charge of the outgo, you have to figure out all those numbers all the time and bringing that in from the home atmosphere into a business atmosphere. And then the S in raise is for schedules and systems. So much of home management, nowadays, especially with trying to control screen time with our kids and the media that comes in, then you've got chores and homework, and you're getting those systems going and those schedules, and you're getting those kids into good habits. And of course, that's something an employer can use, is those management skills. Yes. And then the E in raise is for energy. And that comes a couple different ways, right? If we're getting reasonable sleep, if we have those good sleep habits, if we have good exercise and eating habits, and those all sound physical, but when you get those habits under control, and they're hard, then you have much better mental health.
Yes.
When you're sleeping well, when you are eating reasonably well, when you get some exercise, it does affect us beyond the physical. It's also the mental and emotional wellness.
Absolutely. Again, just absolutely brilliant how you just laid that out. And I mean, in every single thing, you're so right. I remember when I used to go for job interviews and, life was happening and I was pivoting through careers. And I remember sitting in an interview and, someone trying to digest my resume because it was so diverse and they couldn't process my competency section. And because I was, I had started doing that before it was a thing. And I remember, the question is like, so what is it that you do? So, when you go to employers, I mean, it really is, they're thinking with that box. They're trying to put us in categories. They're trying to put us in boxes. And I love how you are defined. You are obliterating the boxes, girl. I love it. I love it, because you're absolutely right. Moms have all of these skills, and just all throughout walks of life, we have skills that we have not thought about, and that's one of the things I do when I work with my clients, it's help them process that, help them identify those soft skills, those transferable skills, and connect those dots. So I love, love, love that you're doing this.
Well, and it really does tie in with what you and I were chatting about before, about how it's in the midst of the challenge that you build those skills. But again, it's a matter of conscientiously committing to the challenge, not fleeing. Just like we were saying before, you've got to be committed to it in order to be willing to put the effort into overcoming. Absolutely. And in the midst of that effort, you are building some good muscles. Tell you what.
Excellent muscles. So now so obviously you help mothers, just kind of redefine that role, that motherhood. Talk a little bit more how you help them define their paths, and like for mothers who are coming to you, who are in that, who are still dealing with that sociocultural paradigm and haven't broken out of that mold or that thought process. How do you work with them?
Well, I really want them to feel inspired. That's a really important element, I think, I think because motherhood can be so repetitive and because it can be so long-term, right? I mean, some people look at motherhood as the full 18 years before your child. And some people are like, no, it's just the 5 years until they're in school, or whatever. But that can be so overwhelming to a woman's psyche, as they're accepting the fact that they're in this for the long term. And if it's just a bunch of laundry and a bunch of nagging kids to clean up, then that's not fun. That is not inspiring, right? I didn't want to sign up for that when I became a mother. So really trying to discover what is it that I personally enjoy about my child, being conscientious and willing to look at my child from a different angle. They're not just a burden that I have to figure out who's going to be my daycare provider, right? Mm-hmm. They're not just, this is happening a lot these days, they value their child like a piece of jewelry maybe, but they trade that child off and on with the divorced partner because of child custody and things like that. Mm-hmm. And that's just such a hardship on that child, So there's just ways that we need to look very specifically at our child and what is it very specifically that we enjoy about mothering that child. And, it's not going to be the diapers. Nobody has ever said, well, I really love the smell of diapers. And I'm so glad that, no. So figuring out what, is there, how do you feel loved by that child, but also how are you giving that child love? Because that's the fuel that people run on.
So true. And so I want to go here and kind of like our last few minutes, so it sounds like this is all connected also to self-work that mothers should be doing. But, when you have children, and you have a husband or what have you, you tend to lose yourself.
Yes.
So, speak to that.
Oh, that is a major issue these days. And I do hear the buzzword kind of, right, of self-care. And as a mom, you are so invested in making sure those kids are doing their self-care. So in order to, I think, address that, realize that you are their model.
Yes.
You are their model. So if you want your child, and there are very simple self-care things, and they are built into that raise up thing. So let's take the energy one, for instance, that is the sleep habits and the exercise and eating habits. And we all know that we feel better if we're exercising. We all know that we feel better if we're eating reasonably well. We all know that we feel better if we get a good amount of sleep. And that's true for our children. Mm-hmm. So as we are trying to get our kids to go to bed at a reasonable time, let's go to bed at a reasonable time. That is self-care right there. That is self-care. If we want them to build good hygiene habits, then let's show them that. Let's model that. If we want them to set goals, then let's set goals and let's talk about it with them, and let's help them be our accountability partners. They would love that, right?
I love that.
I'm going to trick my mom into not doing her exercise so I can get her in trouble. I don't know. But but they love us, and we can use that love to fuel us if we are willing to love them in the ways that they need it in return too.
Absolutely. And I love that whole practice what you preach thing. That applies for motherhood. So many times, like in the generation I grew up in, it's not necessarily, it's like, do what I say, not as I do. My mother was a saint. So, but, seriously. So it's that practice what you preach. And I love those practical suggestions you just gave, because, these generations now, and I'm sure forward, it's different. So, engaging them at that younger age, walking the talk, I love the accountability concept. That was just brilliant, Regan. I love that thought. So it was something else, because you've just given such a wealth of information here and just a different perspective. And I absolutely love that, because perspective is everything, and so many women, we allow ourselves to just kind of sit in a role or, think and see one way, which might be the view of our husband or our significant others. And we don't think for ourselves or don't process. It's not disrespect to think for yourself.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
Right. And that's one of the real dichotomies about motherhood itself, is it's so universal. Yeah. As I mentioned, this is the singular way that anybody ends up on the planet. Even, for Christians, even when God himself wanted to come to the planet, it was through a mother, right? Like this is the singular. So it's so universal. And yet it is so unique. There is no other mother who has ever had the situations that I have, even if she had 8 children, even if they were all the same ages and all the same genders, it would simply be an entirely different thing. And so being able to own it and being able to use your own personal talents and skills and glorify those abilities in the midst of your motherhood, instead of compartmentalizing it and saying, I can only live that life when I'm away from my kids. That doesn't serve our children. Our children need to see us in the midst of our talents, and they will be so inspired. Again, I love that concept of inspiring each other, as opposed to like shoulding on each other. Yes. I did not just swear. I'm not a swearing person. I said shoulding.
I love it. Yes.
But it kind of is a similar concept, but
exactly. No. Yeah, no, it's beautiful. I love how your mind works and just what you're all about and your mission, and just, it's empowering mothers, yes, who are, the salt of the earth. We are the tree of life. Yes. And even for those mothers who aren't birth mothers, do you work with mothers who may have adopted or fostered or they just have children they've taken under their wings?
Yeah, stepmoms, for instance. Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we do. We have a good. We are very interested in variety and diversity, and in gaining from each other what we're all learning as we go through our different paths. So
beautiful. So beautiful. I could just talk to you on and on about the subject, because it's so much here, and one of the things I say, in the opening of my TV show, Candid Conversations, is, as a woman heals, the earth heals. And that's beautiful. What I hear in you, that's what I hear, the work that you're doing. And, and I say, bravo, Regan.
Well, thank you. And thank you for this chance to reach the people in your audience. And I hope that it is inspiring to them.
I'm sure it will be. It's inspiring me. So I hope and trust that it is inspiring them. So many nuggets that you gave today. And I hate our time is so short, but I want to thank you for being our spotlight today. I want the audience to follow you. So please tell them how they can connect with you on social media. How can they best reach you?
Yes, so we are at momivate.org. Momivate, again, is motivate, but with an M in the middle. So MOMIVATE. And it's .org. We're a nonprofit. And we are on Facebook, also Momivate. We are on Instagram. That one is Momivate Moms, is our handle there. So, and we would just love to have people sign up. We give you all kinds of freebies. Being a nonprofit, it's real important to us that everything we present is free for moms as much as possible. So
beautiful, beautiful. Folks, I want you guys to reach out to Regan at momivate.org. If it's no more than getting the freebies, but have a conversation. She's doing tremendous work in the world for moms, and just helping them think without that box and redefining motherhood. So be sure to connect with her. You'll be able to also read her full bio on our Define Your Path podcast platform, which is syndicated everywhere now. If you don't like iTunes, go, you can access it wherever, Spotify, you name it. And be sure to visit our virtual home to see what we're up to at definingpaths.online. And we're going to continue to bring you tremendous people like Regan, who are global thought leaders, who are change agents, who are leading the way. I'm DocV, the Pivot Maestro, and always your corner woman. Be true to you and define your path. And we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks again, Regan.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Define Your Path with DocV. To learn how to see with true vision and define your path, visit definingpaths.online/true-vision.